and welcome everyone to this presentation. There will be a handout, but we decided to distribute that only at the end of the talk, so you can focus on us and on the presentation. What we'd like to do today is introduce you to the new MICASE online interface launched last June. And it will be a very hands-on, step-by-step introduction. Although you don't get your hands on the computer yourself, but we will do that for you, and we will guide you through the steps or the options you have when accessing MICASE online. So here's what we're planning to show you. I will give a very brief introduction to what MICASE is and what is in MICASE and around MICASE, which most of you probably already know. I will then hand over to Steffi, who will take you through accessing MICASE through the online interface and explain to you how you can make the most of its functions, how you can browse the corpus, how you can search the corpus, and then also what you can do with the results, how to analyze the results, and how to save them on your local computer. And I will then provide a couple of examples on how you can use MICASE online output in teaching materials, in creating teaching materials, and in creating testing materials. Okay. As you all know, MICASE stands for Michigan, the Michigan Corpus of Academic Spoken English. It's a collection of more than 1.7 million words of speech from across the University of Michigan, and that means almost 200 hours of recordings, authentic speech events from across campus. We get a wide range of speakers included in this corpus, speakers from different status groups, so you find faculty, staff members, undergraduates, graduates, and also speakers of different native speaker status, different proficiency levels, mainly native speakers of American English, but also some native speakers of other varieties of English, near-native speakers and non-native speakers. On the whole, there are 152 different speech events, including lectures, small and large lectures, colloquia, dissertation defenses, office hours, seminars, and so on. And also different disciplines covered by these different speech events, disciplines from the humanities, the social sciences, physical sciences, health sciences. So it is a very nicely balanced and representatively sampled collection of data, and it reflects the type of speech produced in a large American research university at the turn of the millennium, roughly. So it is, in terms of the criteria, how you compile a corpus, it is a very nice example of a balanced and representative set. Our homepage, the MICASE index website, has this rather lengthy link, but it is directly linked from the ELI website, so it's easy to find the MICASE index website. That's not the interface, not the online interface. We will show you that in a minute. But this is a website you may want to consult too, which gives you a nice overview of the project and provides links to resources, MICASE-based resources. First, giving you some history and description, information about the design of the project, about the speakers included, and a statistical overview of the speech events. A link to the MICASE manual with a lot of information about the corpus. Then a link to the search interface, and that's where we're going to go in a minute. And also what you might want to check here, or what many of you already use in their teaching, are the instructional materials. So this is an overview of what former and present members of the MICASE team and ELI instructors have compiled, all based on corpus materials. And I see Cheryl over there, and she created many of these lectures here. For instance, on complaining, together with John. And so topics like complaining, hedging, idioms that are very important in ESL, ENL teaching have already been dealt with, and you find MICASE-based materials to teach these topics. But now we will go straight to the online interface, and this is the address, and I will hand over to Steffi, who will take you through searching and browsing MICASE.
Thank you. Okay, so as Ute outlined earlier, I'm going to do this in 4 steps. We will first talk about how to browse the corpus, that is, just look at what is there. Then I will give you a couple examples of how to search for particular words and phrases in the corpus. Then I will introduce you to the functions that we have in terms of analyzing the results online, and the statistics that are already automatically provided whenever you search for something. And then finally we will get to how to save those results. All right, this is what the online interface starting page looks like. It's very simple. We basically have 2 hyperlinks here, one for browsing, one for searching. Let's browse first. Okay, the browse option provides, first of all, basically access to all the files. So if you are not familiar or too familiar with the corpus yet and what it contains, the browsing option is a good starting point for everybody to actually gain an understanding of what is available to you in MICASE. Alternatively, though, the browsing function already gives you the option of selecting only specific groups of files. Okay. So if you're interested only in a particular event type, such as small lectures as opposed to large lectures, or discussion groups as opposed to lectures or whatever, you have the option of retrieving only those files. Similarly, you could go only for a particular discipline. So if you are teaching, say, biology students or students in physical engineering, the kind of language that you want to teach will be drastically different at times from that of, say, English composition students. So accordingly, it makes sense to look only at the corresponding files from that discipline. And likewise, you can select files that contain speech events produced by particular speakers, such that you may be interested in the language of faculty as opposed to students, or natives as opposed to non-natives or near natives. All right, this is where you'd click to browse, and this gets you right here. At first sight, that might look a little bit complicated, but it actually is pretty simple. Let's focus on the right-hand side of this first. Actually, this is just a list of all the criteria according to which every individual file that is contained in MICASE has been classified. Okay? And accordingly, you can search for files that fulfill these criteria. And you can mix and match however you like. So, with regard to speaker attributes, you could go for speech produced only by junior faculty. With regard to native speaker status, as I already said, you could select only the near-native speakers, and so on. For non-native or near-native speakers, you can even specify what their L1 language background should be. German, Arabic, well, basically everything that is covered in MICASE. And likewise, for the transcript attributes, you can here select the the academic division, such as biological and health sciences, or the academic discipline, which gives you an even more fine-grained distinction in terms of English versus English composition, for example, and so on. Also note that here you can select the interactivity level of the language produced in different files. If you are interested in large chunks of uninterrupted speech, you might want to pick a file that is low in interactivity. If, however, you are into turn-taking and how people hold the floor and how people discuss things, then you might select files which are rated as highly interactive. Okay. Now, as I said, in the default case, if you don't specify anything here, you will get a list of all the transcripts, and that's what it looks like. So this is basically an alphabetical list of all the 152 transcripts that comprise the corpus. You have on the left-hand side a hyperlink that will get you to the transcript itself, the title, which should inform you to some extent already just what this is about, and then the recording length and the number of words of that file. Alternatively, we might say, okay, I am only interested in those files where the academic discipline is economics. You simply click on there, it's going to be highlighted in blue like there. Again, submit browse, okay, and what you get then is the following list. So you see there are 4 files in MICASE that fulfill this criterion, economics, and from here you can then either say, well, let's look at this transcript right away by simply clicking left mouse click and view the transcript on screen. Alternatively, you could say, well, I want to really look at this more closely at home or wherever, so you can actually save it. You do this from here, from this page, by clicking the right mouse click, then choose the option Save Target As, and save it, in this case in HTML format. All right, if you just look at it on screen, this is what it looks like. You have a header, a brief description, a summary of the core characteristics of that file, and then you actually have the transcript itself. If you scroll down here, you can read the whole text. Okay. From here, there's also an alternative saving option, namely to download the entire transcript in XML. Now, many of you will not be interested in that option because XML comes with a lot of annotation. So, if you're only interested in selecting particular examples for a worksheet, say, or something like that, then XML is just too much, okay? If, however, you want to do a linguistic analysis on that file offline, then it may be very useful to have the XML annotation because, by definition, it provides you with a lot of extra information that you can look for. All right, this is what an XML file looks like, or the beginning of one, rather. So you have all these tags and angled brackets. Many of you will not be familiar with what they mean. They're pretty transparent, though. And if you're interested in what they mean, in MICASE, may I refer you to this link where you actually have an explanation of all the transcription conventions. You also get to a sort of summarized version of this from our index webpage, and it looks like that. It's a neat little table which gives you the most important and prominent tags, such as speaker tags, pause duration tags, and so on, and a brief explanation of what they mean. Note here that since we're talking about a corpus of spoken language, those punctuation marks here are not really punctuation marks, but they actually are prosodic annotations. So a comma or a period does not mean that there is a sentence boundary, but it rather means that there is a long pause, a discernible pause with falling intonation. Right? Just to bear that in mind. All right, so much for browsing. Now, if we actually want to search something, the basic option that the interface provides is that of creating a so-called quick concordance, that is, a keyword in context display. All right, this is where you'd start. And then you get what actually is a mirror image of the browsing function, only now you can be even more specific and say, I only want those files where we have hits of, well, any given word or phrase, basically. Here, the example I picked, or we picked, is relevant, which seems to be a word that is somewhat important for academic discourse. And it might be interesting, well, from different perspectives, to look at how it's actually properly used in academic discourse. If we, again, do not specify anything further, what we get is all the hits of that word relevant in MICASE as a whole, which actually amounts to 64 matches in 32 transcripts. And this is what a quick concordance looks like. You have the search word or search phrase in the middle, and then you have left and right-hand context. Here, for reasons of, displaying as many examples as possible on one screen, the amount of context is fairly limited, but you can actually, for every individual example, look at the whole utterance context in case you're interested in finding out, well, what is this really about? Sometimes it's not too transparent from just looking at a couple words to the left and a couple words to the right. Okay, but you have that option of looking at the whole utterance, actually. And again, for every hit attested, you also have the option of going into the whole transcript and look at the larger context even. All right. Oh, yeah, this is just an example of what it looks like if you decide to take a look at the whole utterance, okay, as opposed to just the mere concordance. All right. Now, more often than not, just looking at the concordance as it is produced by searching will already, give you the information that you wanted. Sometimes, however, things are a little bit more tricky. And luckily enough, the interface provides you with sorting options so that you can reformat the output of the concordance a little bit. And also, it comes with a display of result statistics, which give you a deeper understanding of how the hits that you retrieved are distributed across, say, disciplines, gender, speaker roles, or other criteria. Let's turn to sorting first. As you may have noticed earlier, every concordance display, on top of it, there are different further options. Saving, but also sorting. This Google-like window right there provides you with the possibility of sorting either to the right-hand context, according to the right-hand context, or alternatively to the left-hand context. In corpus linguistics, we like to go by words. We love words. So, even though it's a tricky notion. So, you could say, well, give me relevant, and then give me all the words directly adjacent to relevant in alphabetical order. Because, for example, you might be interested in the prepositions that follow relevant. Many students, and me, certainly, I do wonder what kind of preposition is the right one. Okay. So by sorting according to R1, that is the first word to the right of the search word, I get that information in a very organized fashion by having words that start with the same letter in order. Okay. R2 then would mean the second word to the right, R3 the third, and so on, and the same for the left-hand context. In this example, we sorted according to the first word to the right, then nested in that the second word to the right, and then nested in that the third word to the right. And this is what it looks like. That's a slice out of the whole concordance. And you see here, asking, what's the preposition that goes with relevant? Well, it's to, obviously. Something is relevant to something else, which is, instantly obvious once you have sorted according to R1. Right? Alternatively, take the example of hand. Hand is very interesting in terms of the more metaphorical uses in academic discourse. So we're not talking about my real hand, but students will be aware of the fact that hand occurs, in a non-literal meaning quite a lot. And the question is just how exactly. If you first search for hand, in my case, and then sort to the left, you get the phraseology around hand instantly. So you see here, we have all the occurrences of on the one hand, on the other hand. So there's the whole phrase. All right. So that's what sorting is good for, really. Alternatively and additionally, you can look at the result statistics around your search. Here's just a screenshot of the top of the page. That's a search for relevant again, I guess. And so you here have a list, basically, of how many hits of relevant you find in each individual file. Sometimes it's interesting to have that information if you want to provide students with a file that you want them to go through, actually, and analyze. It's good to know that there is a sufficient number of hits of whatever you're interested in that file. Okay, so here, for example, we see that the Race and Human Evolution lecture may be a good starting point for looking into relevant. That's another snippet further down the page. So we even have grouped statistics, not only for the individual files and the number of hits, but then we also have summaries, descriptive summaries of, well, how many hits per discipline, per division. You see here relevant, just as a side remark, faculty talks a lot more about relevant things than graduate students. Let's not comment on this. Okay. Last but not least, saving the results. Whenever you've retrieved something cool and interesting and you want to make sure it sticks around on your computer, how do you do that? You can either download the result as XML, or you can do so in tab delimited format. That is, there will be a tab stop intervening between every individual word. Now, why that makes sense, we'll see in a minute. Again, this is where you get to the saved functions from your concordance screen. This is what the XML would look like. Again, we've seen an example of that earlier. Alternatively, if you're not interested in all that XML annotation, you may do the following. Right mouse click, select Save Target As, and then choose a file name, because actually in the default case, it will name all files, regardless of what you search for Corpus, which is not very informative if you do multiple searches and you have all these Corpus files on your desktop, okay? So normally, the most reasonable thing, I guess, is to just pick the search word or search phrase name and assign it that name. As an XLS file, that is an Excel file, and then save. And then you can take that file and open it in Excel or any other spreadsheet software, and with a little bit of reformatting, this is what you get. So you see, you again have your concordance here with the search word in the middle and the left and right hand context, this time without any angled brackets or anything like that. So the annotation is ripped off. And you can now easily enough pick, say, slices or even individual examples, modify the amount of context you want to have, and copy that into your Word document to create a worksheet or something along those lines. Right? Okay, just as a side remark again, even though here we only have left-hand, right-hand context and the search word, all the other info about speaker rows, academic disciplines and stuff comes in the other columns. All right, so it's not, this information is actually right there. All right. Back to Ute.
Okay, thank you. Right, let's move on to the third and final part of this presentation, and that's where I want you to become active too, at the very end of it at least. So what I wanted to do is give you some examples on how MICASE online output can be used for three different purposes. For self-teaching purposes, that's something you might want to tell your students about, in the creation of teaching materials and in creating testing materials. Now, the self-teaching option we thought about would be really useful for any ESL or EFL student. Well, maybe also for native speakers of English who may not be feel comfortable about using academic patterns or academic formula well, need to get a grip on how to use particular words in this context, in the context of academic speech or academic discourse in general. What they could do is use the search interface to find out about a couple of really important things here. One is the frequency of a word, and that's what you get immediately when you submit your search. You get figures, you get frequency information. And you could, for instance, compare frequencies of words, of pairs of words, or of near synonyms to see which one is favored in a particular speech event or in academic speech in general. You can look at the concordance and look at the word in context or a phrase in context and identify different meanings of a particular word. Again, looking at frequency distributions, because you may want to know which meaning of a particular item is the most frequent one and are the most relevant one for learners to learn first, maybe, so they can handle academic discourse better. The context of a word in a concordance display, again, preferably in a sorted concordance display, because sorting highlights patterns, and that's really neat. If you see that a particular word occurs in clusters and you get repeated occurrences, usually meaning is not associated with a word in isolation, but with a combination of words. Like Steffi shows the example of hand. Hand in isolation can mean different things. But if we look at hand in academic speech or in academic writing, we find clusters we find 4-word clusters on the one hand, on the other hand. And the meaning here is not in the word hand, but it's in the unit. John Sinclair's most recent notion for this was meaning shift unit. So the meaning shifts, and it's not the individual meaning or the meaning of the individual words anymore. So this is something you can find. The context of a word, we also saw an example for this kind of search, looking at prepositions that follow a particular verb. That's something you may want to know, or your students may want to focus on. And then you can focus on or analyze the use of a word or phrase in a particular speech event or in a particular discipline, which may or may not be different from general English. So high-frequency words where learners think, well, I know what this word means, may not mean the same thing in a particular disciplinary discourse. So that will be the self-teaching option. For teaching, we created a little example. And we assumed that very often what you want to teach is not just a word or a group of words in isolation, but rather a pragmatic function or a communicative purpose, so some kind of discoursal feature where you may find it difficult to find appropriate instances, appropriate speech samples to teach this function, and also to identify the right kind of words and phrases that are used to express this particular function. So we thought of teaching criticism strategies, which may be something you want to teach. And here, relevant items that express negative evaluation may be hard to find. You can one way of going about this would be to sit down and think, and make a list of words and phrases that come to mind when you think of criticism in general, or expressing negative evaluation. And then you could search for them. But we thought of an alternative to doing that. If you cannot come up with relevant examples, how to find relevant data in MICASE. So one option would be to check the MICASE handbook, which is a valuable resource for any kind of questions around MICASE. And this has a very nice table, maybe you can circulate it. This has a table called the Pragmatic Features Overview Chart. And in this table, you find transcripts annotated for a range of different pragmatic functions. So in this case, we just checked this table for negative evaluation, right? And found several transcripts which were marked for high in negative evaluation. And we picked just one, the English composition tutorial. Now, how do you find this? How would you find this in MICASE? What would you do? After Steffi showed you how to go about this. how would you find this transcript in the corpus? Remember, you have the browse option and you have the search. Benita, you would browse? You would browse. Very good. Let's browse. Got it. You got it right, yes. So, browse MICASE. But what to browse for? You know, this is the browse. This is what you click on. We need to just search for the right academic discipline, and the English composition is right there. So you just need to highlight English composition, then click Submit Browse. And according to the MICASE handbook, this is high in negative evaluation, okay? So let's look at the transcript, and that's what Steffi and I did. We just read through part of it. This is very high up in the transcript, actually, so it wasn't hard to find negative evaluation here at all. Because it's basically all over the place in this composition tutorial. So the context is a lecturer sits with a student and they discuss her writing, I think, in this case. His writing, I don't remember that. But anyway, it's a lecturer and a student. And it's about something the student didn't do right, or didn't hand in at the right time, at least. So S1 is the lecturer, S2 is the student. And I don't know if you can read this, maybe I should read out some of the lines here. The lecturer says it seems a little mysterious because you don't actually explain. And then the student says, right, because I decided not to explain the detail. And the lecturer, okay, is there anything you can say generally in a sort of general category? I mean, do I need to? That's the student again. And the lecturer, well, it seems a little mysterious. I mean, typically people would say, like, I broke my leg, or, I had appendicitis, or, okay. You know what I'm saying? They would just have a kind of, they wouldn't give the details, but they would just sort of, in a general category, yeah, it's a kidney disease. So the lecturer was expecting some kind of excuse, at least, for not having handed in the composition or whatever what she was supposed to do. So what we then thought is, well, let's look for pointers for negative evaluation, critical expressions. This phrase, I mean, this is clearly negatively evaluative. It seems a little mysterious because you don't actually explain. It seems mysterious, so that's not good. But what do we find in this context? It seems, actually, a little. Is there anything you can say? It seems a little mysterious. I mean, you know what I'm saying, kind of, sort of. Oops, that was too quick. So all these pointers, apparently, negative evaluation gets hedged a lot. And we thought, well, why not take these pointers, why not take these hedges and search for them to find more instances of negative evaluation, or just search for some of them. And we picked it seems. So where to go from here? You already saw that. We went to the concordance search page again and submitted a query for it seems in MICASE online. I forgot to say this identify pointers for negative evaluation task could be an in-class activity too. So you could study the transcript with your students and have them find pointers or have them find instances of negative evaluation. So if you then need more transcripts, you don't just want this one, but you're looking for more examples that you could look at with your students. You could just follow a kind of a snowball effect, maybe, especially at this time of year, that could work. And just pick some of the items you identified in one sample and do a concordance on them to find more relevant samples. So for it seems we get 301 matches in 93 transcripts. And we could, as Steffi showed us, we could just go to any of the 91 transcripts straight from the concordance, but we may not want to look at all 91 transcripts. So which transcripts would you look at? What would you do at this point? We have an option up here, view statistics, right? So you could just look at the statistics and see, well, which transcripts are very rich. Sorry, Jay, should I go back? Okay. So which ones are rich in, or where do we find multiple instances, not just one hit, for it seems, but several. Defenses, very good. So we have the defenses here, two dissertation defenses, and also a discussion section, a philosophy discussion section. So, and you could scroll further down the list, so there may be a few more that are high in this particular item, or where you find more than just one or two occurrences. But it's interesting that you find these dissertation defenses where obviously there is some evaluation going on, especially at the end of the defense. So we went to the social psychology dissertation defense, and one nice thing is that the search word that the term you originally searched for is still highlighted in red, so you see it immediately when you scroll through the transcript. And this example here, again, the font type is too small, so I'm going to read this out. This is evaluative. Well, I haven't thought about what experiments would do it, but it seems to me that there's a gap that would be fun to develop some experiments for if you pursue these again. Sure, I'd be pleased to discuss that with you. So it seems to me that there's a gap. That's clearly negative evaluation. So we found another text sample that expresses where criticism is expressed, and you could find a lot more of these just using this methodology. Now, finally, how could this be useful in the creation of testing materials? Well, there are actually several things that might be relevant for language testers and items writers. One is, of course, that you can retrieve at the click of a mouse just lots of authentic speech samples, speech situations and different topics. You can find real-life examples of items you want to test. You wouldn't have to invent examples anymore because you have real-life examples there, and lots of them. You could find examples or present the selected items in their most typical context, not the one that comes to your mind first, but that is most frequently used if you compare different uses of a particular word. And this may also be interesting. I already mentioned that in the self-teaching slide, that you can identify the most prominent meaning of a particular word or phrase. And we try to use all of this information, or that's what you could do. You could use all of this information to create authentic and relevant test items. And Steffi and I created a little example based on phrasal verbs with give. So we thought one thing you may need, although we are certainly not experts in that field, but one thing you may need are cloze tests around a certain group of words. And one thing that I still have problems with are phrasal verbs and, well, what preposition to use as an advanced learner of English. So we thought, well, let's create an exercise. Let's create a cloze test around phrasal verbs with give. So what prepositions do we usually find in academic speech right in the position R1 immediately to the right of give? So we submitted a query for give, and there were lots of instances of give, sorted it to the right, and found, and we thought that was interesting, only 4 of all the theoretically possible prepositions that could occur, only 4 prepositions, back, off, out, and up, occur repeatedly in academic speech. So we scrolled through all the concordance lines here, but it doesn't take a lot of time if you have a sorted concordance. So you see immediately, and you see it even better in your Excel, say, in your spreadsheet, because then you can use a non-proportional font size, and it's not as well, this is slightly messy, not messy, but it's slightly not aligned, and you can see patterns more easily in your Excel spreadsheet. So only 4 prepositions occur repeatedly, and this set may be different from the prepositions give takes in non-academic English or in academic writing, or, well, in general spoken American English. So that would be an interesting question.